Alrighty. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedure authorized by the FOIA and Emergency Ordinance and Young Adults Advisory Council, further known as the Council, needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask for your patience. First, because each member of the council is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each council member participating in this meeting to state your name, location from which you are participating, and location in which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can be heard from your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can be heard by every other member. All right, Denver Stupinger calling in for Moakton. Muhammad Rahman. Sarah Bufano.
Present, calling in from Fairfax, Virginia.
Kiana Simpkins.
Present from Herndon, Virginia.
Thank you. Casey Judge.
Casey Judge calling from Falls Church, Virginia.
Natalia Denise Moody.
Natalia emailed me, said she wasn't going to be able to make it today.
All right. Judith Kupla.
Sujit Coppola calling in from Vienna, Virginia.
Wonderful. Anna McCoy.
Anna McCoy calling in from Alexandria, Virginia.
Diego Rodriguez Cabrera.
Diego calling in from Alexandria, Virginia.
Melanie Marie Stover. Jessica Sun.
Jessica emailed me indicating that she was moving today and was running a bit behind, so she's not going to be able to join us either.
All right, and Lee Jackson. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to my vice chair, to our secretary, Diego Rodriguez Cabrera, so that I may be heard to make a requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the council.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you, sir. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communications is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the council to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures that require physical assembly of the council and physical presence of the public cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the council may conduct this meeting electronically through dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by registering through the meeting link on the Young Adults Advisory Council website, which is www.fairfaxcounty.gov/economics-adults-advisory-council-YAA, or by calling 1-844-621-3956 and entering access code 129-219-5708. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And
All
it
right.
carries.
Thank you. Finally, it is required that all matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself and are necessary to the continuing of the Fairfax County government and or statutory requirements are necessary to continue operations and discharge of the council's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved. All right, so you all were provided an agenda for today. Are there any amendments to the agenda proposed?
Just pulling it up here so everybody, just make sure everyone's had a chance to take a look at it. Oop, too much. Sorry about that.
I under announcements we will talk about the attendance policy. I know it's not formally noted, but we will talk about attendance policy in the announcements. All right. Hearing no edits or concerns or amendments, the agenda carries and is passed. And now I'm going to proudly introduce two of our very own allies and young folks in the county, Fairfax County, who've been doing really great work on planning and zoning, who will give us a really wonderful overview that I think intersects with all of our passion points. So Graham and Casey, I will pass this over to you.
Well, thank you, Denver, and thank you guys for coming tonight. So one of the things that we mentioned at the meeting last week, we're going over affordable housing, and I started to realize, that the portion of the presentation that I was doing with Judith kind of started. It basically just launched straight into comprehensive planning and policy, and so I wanted to just kind of take a step back from that. And make sure that this group was familiar with and really had a really good understanding of the way that we do land use planning and zoning in Fairfax County. And the reason is, first of all, it's obviously of great interest, professional interest to me as a planner, and same with Casey. But I really think of it as something that it impacts everybody, and it's one of the police powers of the state, so to speak, that really. It in so many different ways, from just a quality of life standpoint, really can shape the character of a population and the character of people's lives. So, and young people in particular, I think that we'll get into this. We certainly feel the impacts of decisions that are made in the land use realm, but we're not necessarily always as present in terms of our involvement in planning. So. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of the young adult kind of advocacy and voice in this sector, and so it's something that Casey and I, as planners, have really seen on a pretty regular basis when we're doing outreach, because outreach is obviously a huge part of what we do. So we wanted to give everybody kind of an overview. I think this presentation is called Planning 101, but it's actually a bit deeper into the nitty-gritty of how the comprehensive plan works, and also the zoning ordinance. So I think our presentation, I'm guessing, is going to take about an hour. And Sarah, this will be somewhat familiar to you, at least the first half. I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter than I did last time, so that we're not just covering the same stuff that we covered in the subcommittee a couple of weeks back. But this will be looking at both the comprehensive plan, which is the long-term vision for the county, and then also looking at probably the most important tools, one of the most important tools, probably the most important tool for implementing the plan, which is the zoning ordinance, which, as you know, Casey is intimately familiar with. So I'm going to start my presentation here. So just 1 second. All right, so is everybody seeing the actual presentation as opposed to my notes? Okay, just making sure there. All right, don't as I mentioned last time, I don't want everybody knowing my secrets, so I'm going to keep the.
So it just switched, Graham. Now I'm seeing the notes.
Really?
You were all good. We couldn't see any of your secrets. There we go. Now you're good.
Okay, well, good. All right. Well, I'll just ad lib it, because it seems that I can't have both at one time. So, okay. So first, before we get into this, I wanted to just mention one thing and start with one question, which is, why do we do land use planning? In general, I think that the thing that they teach you in planning school is that the most important factor in land use planning, and the rationale for it, is that it's really there to help ensure, maintain, and enhance the quality of life for people that live in the jurisdiction. Planning helps to establish goals for our community, and that's a really important thing, especially in an incredibly large and dynamic community such as Fairfax County, where you have a real diversity, not just in terms of the people, but also in terms of their priorities. And you have a lot of different interests, a lot of different stakeholders, and planning is basically the way in which we can balance and come to terms with competing goals within the community. Planning, when done right, is there to help promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens And it's also there to help manage growth, change, and renewal in the community. So planning really is in Virginia, the Code of Virginia, which is the state law, requires that all localities have a plan, a comprehensive plan, which calls for the general orderly development of the county, and also requires that there be a body that's essentially in charge of the planning efforts. In Fairfax and in all jurisdictions, it's called the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission is an advisory appointed body. The members of the Planning Commission are appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and they're there to advise them on land development and the planning for the county. So one of the things that they're there to do is really look at the location, character, extent of all public facilities. They're there to help write the comprehensive plan as well as amendments to the comprehensive plan, but the Planning Commission does a lot of other things as well in terms of implementation. So looking at the zoning ordinance, which looks at specifically how the plan is implemented from a land development standpoint. Also looking at amendments to the public facilities manual, which gets into kind of the nitty-gritty details of how facilities are to be constructed. So, and then also the subdivision ordinance, which obviously looks at and regulates the subdivision of land. The Planning Commission also looks at proposals to rezone sites, which Casey will touch on what that process is and how it works. Special exceptions were just a specific type of zoning approval. And then they also look at various other types of applications. So comprehensive sign plans, for example, just various things that are involved in the entitlement process, the land entitlement process. I would say that the Planning Commission, I'll say it before, I'll say it again, they are an advisory board. They do not themselves make decisions. The Board of Supervisors is the legislative authority within Fairfax County. It's elected by the community. Obviously, you elect your members of the board, and they are the ones that are equipped to pass resolutions, ordinances, and actually the ones that approve land use applications. They're also the ones that, after recommendations from the Planning Commission, are involved with looking at amendments to the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, public facilities manual, subdivision ordinance, all those things that the Planning Commission is there to provide their expertise and general recommendations on. The board takes those into consideration prior to making a decision, but they're the ones that have the ultimate say. The Board of Supervisors, in addition to kind of approving applications and amendments, making decisions, is they also make appointments to various positions. So the Planning Commission, Young Adults Advisory Council, for example, is another appointed entity, but there's hundreds, most likely, of them at this point. They're called boards, authorities, and commissions. Of course, all meetings, just like this one, are open to the public. Public's encouraged to attend, and all discussions, except for some that are related to litigation, for example, personnel matters, are they're going to be subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. So public engagement. I mentioned this after the board and the Planning Commission as kind of the big stakeholders in the land use planning realm. Public engagement is very much part and parcel of how planning is done in Fairfax County. Some jurisdictions are really good at this. Some are not so good at it. Some citizenries are very much engaged in the land use planning process. Some are not. And I can say with certainty that the public is very, very much engaged in Fairfax County. And we as staff to the Planning Commission and to the board, a big part of our job is doing public outreach and public engagement and ensuring that people are aware of what policies are being proposed to be changed, what land applications are being proposed to go through the process, for example. So they're very much invited to propose changes to the comprehensive plan, for example. One of the projects that I work on is called SSPA, and that is a process through which people can actually submit what we call nominations to change specific comprehensive plan text. So that's very much a public engagement aspect, is allowing specifically active participation. And then there's also kind of the less active, perhaps more reactive aspect to it, where staff can go out and seek comments during the amendment process or during the rezoning process to see, if there are specific concerns that the community has with regards to any projects that are moving through the pipeline. And then another thing that I think that the young adults group would be very much interested in is that there are some standing, what we call standing land use committees. And these are made up of community members where they are tasked with providing recommendations, usually to a specific supervisor. So one example is in the Lee district, for example. I work in the Lee district a lot. They have a standing land use committee called the Lee Land Use Committee that is there, and it's a standing group of citizens whose role it is to specifically provide recommendations to the Lee district supervisor, Supervisor Lusk, on matters related to land use decisions. So when you have rezonings that are going through the process, comprehensive plan amendments, changes that are being proposed, they will often get involved prior to an application going to one of the actual Fairfax County body, so the planning commission or the board, for example, and provide their own recommendations. In addition to the standing groups, those that are just kind of there and are formed and are there as needed, there are also task forces. And task forces may be charged by either the board or by specific board members to review applications, review specifically plan amendments when they're going through the process, and develop, in some cases, develop the text that the planning commission and the board will ultimately vote on. So there's a lot of opportunities to engage in the land use planning process beyond just going to a public meeting and saying a couple of words. There's very much a lot of opportunities to get very actively involved in the process. So the comprehensive plan. This is where we start basically in Fairfax County in terms of land use. So it's as I mentioned previously, it is a requirement. It's a statutory requirement. The Code of Virginia requires that all localities have a comprehensive plan to shape the orderly development of the county. In Fairfax, the first comprehensive plan was adopted in the 50s. The plan contains recommendations. It is not the law of the land. It is merely recommendations about how the land, about how land use policy should be implemented. And the plan must show the locality's long-range recommendations for general development. So it's not getting, in most cases, down into the weeds of setbacks or the type of landscaping that you'd like to see. What we really kind of focus on are kind of the higher level ways in which we want development to take place. And then I would say, while it is, the plan is a guide, it's not the law, it is almost always going to be followed. So it is a very powerful guide, especially in Fairfax. Not all jurisdictions use the comprehensive plan as kind of religiously as we do here, but we very much do follow the plan nearly all the time. So the plan has several components. The first is what we call the policy plan. This is a set of just general guidance that's applicable across the entire county. So these are outlining objectives, policies, guidelines to help guide planning and development review towards implementing countywide goals. And so in the policy plan, we're looking at specific topics. So environmental policy, land use policy, transportation policy, heritage resources or historic resources, as it's often referred to, public facilities, these kinds of topics that are very general in nature and have countywide implications. Those policies, goals, and objectives are contained in what's called the policy plan. In addition to the policy plan, we do have what are called the area plans. I'll get to that in a second with regards to how they're divided up. But for the purposes of this slide, it's just important to know that there are area plans that deal with more specific areas. So Annandale, for example, has an area plan. Tyson's has an area plan. Reston has an area plan. The Richmond Highway Corridor has an area plan. These are just areas that are identified as having a specific need for a specific plan. So those are contained in the comprehensive plan as well. The comp plan also has a series of maps. So we have a plan map that shows the general land use of the county, transportation plan, which shows all of the existing and proposed transportation network elements. So this obviously includes roads, it includes the interstate highway system, but then it also includes the bicycle network and the trails plan. So there's a lot of factors that go into the comprehensive plan from a transportation perspective. The effort that we had heard from earlier on in, I think it was back in November with Nicole's group and Chris Wells when they came out, that's looking specifically at the active transportation element. So the bike network plan, which is something that they'll be working on as they go about amending and creating the new active transportation plan. And then lastly, we do have a plan glossary, which basically is just it's a list of definitions and terms. So the concept for future development. This map right here shows what we've referred to as the concept for future development. And what this is it's the base from which everything else in terms of the areas and the area recommendations within the comprehensive plan are based. So the concept for future development looks at the long-term vision, so a 20-year plus horizon, as we call it, of how we want specific areas of the county to be shaped. So you'll notice a couple of things in particular. Obviously, the area that's in black is the Tyson's area, which, as most of you are probably aware, is the area that we have planned to be a truly urban center. So this is where we have unlimited potential in terms of your development within a quarter mile of the metro stations within Tyson. So that's where we want, the highest intensities and densities of development to be located. Other areas, the purple areas are what we call the suburban centers, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, but it does mean something in terms of Fairfax County. It just means that it's an area where we want to have a mix of uses, a mix of activity centers, where we have the ability for people to work, live, work, and play, and be able to get around by means other than a vehicle. You'll note that most of the county is located in the green and the yellow, and so these are areas in which they're largely just suburban neighborhoods, low density residential areas. And in most cases, these are areas that are not planned to significantly change. And so those are areas that are suburban in nature. A lot of them are single family or single family attached or detached areas that are planned to remain as such. A couple of others that pop out to me. The red areas are community business centers. In most cases, these are areas that are older suburban centers that are in most cases in need of revitalization in a lot of instances. And so that we have specific programs and policies in place to help encourage redevelopment in these areas. So the Richmond Highway Corridor, Springfield, Bailey's, Seven Corners, Annandale. So a couple of these areas are what we call the CBCs, or the community business centers. And then blue, for example, that's Fort Belvoir North, and Dulles. Those are GMU. Those are our large institutional land areas. And those are areas also where we don't have land use control. Those areas have specific plans that either that are run by DOD, for example, or the Dulles Airport Authority, or the state in the case of George Mason. So countywide policies, these are just a couple of examples. I'm not going to read these, but as I mentioned, the policy plan establishes our goals and objectives countywide. It deals with land use, transportation, affordable housing, and many, many more. So if you want more info on that, I'd be happy to provide you kind of more of our general guidance that's applicable countywide. And then the area plans. So as I mentioned, we do have some specific areas. There are 4 area plans specifically that deal with the general breakdown of the county. So area 1, Annandale, Lincolnia, Bailey's, and what's called Jefferson. So that's area a little bit to the southwest of the city of Falls Church. Area 2 is the area surrounding city of Fairfax, town of Vienna, McLean, Tyson's. Area 3 is the area around Chantilly and Centerville, Springfield area, and Reston. And then area 4 is the Lee District and Mount Vernon District, Springfield, Richmond Highway Corridor, for example. So within the plan, and I'm not going to get into too much detail on this, we do have kind of a series of Russian dolls, basically, in terms of our recommendations. So we have the countywide guidance, which contains countywide policies for implementation. And then we get further and further segmented down into more and more refined geography. So this map to the left shows the Richmond Highway Corridor, for example, and it looks at the kind of a string of pearls, so to speak, along the Richmond Highway Corridor, Route 1, where you have the community business centers, which are the areas where we have upplanned very recently with the Embark project. And these are areas that are planned to have a mix of uses at higher intensities. And to string it all together, and as justification for that, we have a bus rapid transit system, which is a type of transit that will be high frequency bus travel along the entirety of the Route 1 corridor. And so the higher intensities are there to help support the BRT system and allow for a more urban mixed use future for the corridor. And then over to the left, we have a different geography entirely. This is the Reston plan, which is as most of you are aware, Reston is unique. It was a planned community from the onset. Robert Simon was kind of the founder of Reston, and he laid out a vision for Reston that is a part of the comprehensive plan. And this is the current land use plan, which shows the area along the Dulles corridor, for example, in purple, which are the areas that were previously zoned and planned for your kind of your office uses, industrial uses, light industrial, but is now becoming more mixed use now that the Silver Line is up and running for at least the majority of the Dulles corridor. And then outside of those purple areas, you have a mix of open spaces. That's one of the things that Reston is very famous for, is a great system of trails and green spaces. This is shown in green, of course. And then areas in orange and tan are kind of those more suburban style development patterns that might be single family attached, single family detached. And then you got a couple of areas that are outside of the Dulles corridor that are just more commercial in nature. So your village centers. So North Point, if you're familiar with Reston, the area around Home Depot, those are just areas that are planned for a mix of uses in most cases. We also have a transportation plan, as I mentioned. So within the comprehensive plan, we do have very specific recommendations for the existing and the planned improvements to the transportation network. So these are a couple of examples from PennDOT CBC, which is one of the community business centers along the Richmond Highway corridor, just to the south of what we call North Gateway, in the intersection of Route 1 and the Beltway. And so this is maybe about 1.5 miles down the corridor at the intersection basically of North Kings Highway and Route 1. And so this map shows from the Embark plan the concept for our multimodal network. So you have the transit boulevard, which is going to be the bus rapid transit system along Richmond Highway, for example. And then you have what we refer to in the planning realm as the grid of streets. And the grid of streets is the future planned network of streets and around which we would have a more mixed use vision for this area. So that's a big thing, especially when you have a relatively suburban style of development, where you have a lot of cul-de-sacs, have a lot of dead end streets that don't necessarily contribute to a network, is how can we make a grid of streets that's more urban in character to allow for greater densities and allow for a higher quality of life for people that want a more active life, basically. So this multimodal network really kind of gets into the detail about, where do we want to have on-road bike lanes, for example, what roads are going to be kind of segmented into various widths. So you have some that are very large boulevards, for example, some are going to be smaller avenues. Where are pedestrian connections going to be? Where do we need to expand sidewalks? So it gets into all of that. One of the ideas that's really important in the Richmond Highway corridor CBCs is this idea of ecological spines. So we really kind of get into these kind of pretty forward-thinking ideas, in especially in the Embark corridor, to allow for just a redevelopment pattern that's more sustainable and thoughtful in the future. A couple of terms, we use these on a day-to-day basis, density and intensity. I just wanted to make sure that everybody kind of is aware of what this typically means. When we speak about density, you'll hear that term a lot when you're learning about planning. In Fairfax, we really only refer to density when we're talking about residential development. And so density is typically expressed as dwelling units per acre. So just looking at the number of units that are located within a specific acre of property. So a couple of examples of what it might mean to have, an X dwelling units per acre. So your single family detached dwellings really can run the gamut from anywhere from as large of a lot as you might imagine, pretty much up to about 4 to 5 dwelling units to the acre. 5 dwelling units to the acre, or four dwelling units to the acre, for example, is a 1/4 acre lot, so about 10,000 square feet or so. And beyond that, you start to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it makes more and more sense to actually have attached units. So the next kind of category up, 5 to 8 dwelling units to the acre, those are looking at your townhouse style developments, attached townhouses. Going higher up the spectrum, 12 to 16 dwelling units to the acre, that's with your traditional kind of older style of garden style apartments. Those are in most cases just existing. There aren't frankly that many developers that are doing garden style units these days, but they can. It's just not as popular as they used to be. And then as you get a little bit higher and higher, 16 to 20, maybe some mid-rise units, and then upwards of 20 dwelling units to the acre, at least in Fairfax, is what we consider to be high-rise or higher density development. So your kind of your Texas donut style multifamily residential units are typically in that higher 20 to 30 dwelling units to the acre sort of range. Last one I'll leave you with in terms of planning terms is intensity. So intensity is another way of looking at kind of how much development is on the site. And intensity is typically expressed as what we call floor area ratio, or FAR. Some people say FAR, which I would never say FAR, but plenty of people do call it that. Just want to throw it out there. If you see it in the literature, it's FAR. So just throwing it out there as a pet peeve of mine. But it's a simple ratio. It looks at the total amount of floor area of the building, and then you divide that by the land area upon which it's situated. So FAR, it doesn't really refer to the form of the building at all. You might have a 1-story building that encompasses the entirety of the land upon which it sits. That's a 1 FAR. Another way of looking at it is kind of as illustrated in this picture. You could have a 4-story building that's only taking up a quarter of the land upon which it sits. That's still just a 1 FAR. But the FARs can range. You might have some of your industrial areas might just be like a 0.35 FAR. That's pretty typical. Your more higher intensity developments are going to be upwards of 0.7, although and then the ceiling is there is no ceiling essentially in some areas in terms of how much FAR. Places like Reston, like the TSAs, the areas that are along the transit corridors, for example, those are usually a 2 to 3, sometimes a 4 FAR. The areas around Tyson's typically going to be upwards of 5, sometimes 6, sometimes even higher FAR. But most mixed use developments are usually looking at anywhere from about a 1.0 FAR to a 3.0 FAR is pretty typical. I'm running over into Casey's time, so I'm just going to go through this very quickly, but we'll post this, and if you have any questions, feel free. As I mentioned, there are a lot of areas that were shown in that red, in that concept for future development, where we have specifically targeted areas for community revitalization. This is looking at some of our older suburban centers, some of the areas that in some cases just have not kept up in terms of development over the years. So those are areas where we have various programs. In some cases, they're economic incentive programs. In some cases, they're land use programs that try to revitalize these areas and encourage development that's more in line with the community standards and community's vision. So that's where we have some design guidelines, for example. So we really kind of get into how does the form of development look, as opposed to just regulating intensity or regulating land use. We really want to kind of encourage development, and specifically the kind of development that would build a better community and a better future. Lastly, plan amendment process. This is what I do most all day long, so I'll just leave you with this, but it's just a flow chart kind of showing what our plan amendment process looks like. We do regularly update the comprehensive plan on it's a constant basis, as Diego knows. And it's one of these things that we have a work program where we just try to schedule all of our comprehensive plan amendments. We do our impacts analysis, study the amendments, do our public engagement with the task forces, and then we have public hearings with the public planning commission, the board. All this takes place at the board's request, what we call an authorization to look at a plan amendment, and then ultimately it'll be the board is the one that takes action. So they ultimately kind of vote up or down any changes to the comprehensive plan. All right, so I'm finished with the comp plan. And Casey, do you want to take over? I know you had a slide deck as well. Did you want to skip this?
Yeah. That would be great. Sorry, my slides weren't playing nicely with that format. So would you be able to allow me to share my screen?
Yep.
It's grayed out right now. Perfect.
Mhm.
All right. Oops. All right. You can see the screen, not the notes. Are we good? Excellent. All right. So now into the zoning. I know Graham kind of touched on, basically why do we care? How does this impact us, especially the Young Adult Advisory Council? Zoning decisions and land use decisions in general, they create the places and spaces that we want to live, work, and play. They create the mosaic districts, the Tyson's, basically rebuilding, redesigning Reston Town Center. So we definitely want to make sure that we have a voice at the table when these decisions are being made. These land use decisions shape policy from the environment, from transportation, affordable housing. All of these issues that are near and dear to our hearts are directly impacted and shaped by the land use decisions and zoning decisions. And then what a lot of people really care about, it really does impact what you can or can't do on your property or what your neighbor can or can't do on their property. So if you want to be able to take advantage of a certain policy, you want to show up and be able to support that policy. Or, on the flip side, if you don't think your neighbor should be doing it, you might come out and say, I don't think this is the direction that the county should be going. So in terms of zoning, what is it? It does implement that comprehensive plan like Graham had mentioned. This is the legal body, the legal document that really puts the teeth in and lets us, shape the way that we want to see the county. We do have distinct zoning districts that regulate uses, heights, structures, regulates densities, and they're carved out in a zoning map. And you'll see that in the background of this slide here. All the different colors are indicating the different zoning districts that we have. Again, it allocates land uses. It says what uses are appropriate in certain districts and what uses may not be appropriate. Gives you those regulations, those setbacks, those building heights to make sure that things aren't towering over each other or really close when they shouldn't be. And like I mentioned, that zoning map really is the tool that shows you where the zoning districts are. If you're ever interested in finding your own zoning district, we do have a zoning district analyzer on our website where you can go into this little, open it in a new window, put in your address or maybe a property address that you're interested in finding what the zoning may be. I'm going to use a property on Woodley Place. It's a neighboring property to my house. So if you just type in that address, you can see it comes up with this little parcel. And if you click on that parcel, you can actually scroll on over, it gives you the address, the tax map number, and then there's the zoning district, R4. If you click more information, it takes you right to the zoning ordinance. This is showing the current 1978 zoning ordinance, but it shows you the permitted uses, what uses are permitted by special exception or special permit, and then what your setbacks are, what the lot regulations are. This is a great tool if you're interested, in finding out your own property zoning or a shopping center or, what could happen at a certain parcel. In terms of the zoning districts, we have broken them up into 5 different overarching categories in Fairfax County. We have your residential, your commercial, industrial, your planned districts, and your overlay districts. So the residential, commercial, and industrial, they usually have like an R with a number or a letter with a number. So like R2 is your lower intensity residentials. You've got commercial C8, industrial I4, and they all have names associated with them that give you kind of an understanding of what that district is intended to be. Now the planned districts, those are more flexible and they encourage creativity and different design. There's a little more flexibility to be more creative and to increase your FAR or have more flexible setbacks or streetscapes. So those are, like I mentioned earlier, Mosaic, Reston Town Center, Kingstown Town Center. So kind of mixes of uses, and oftentimes the mix of uses required, like residential and commercial. And then lastly, our overlay districts, they do exactly what you'd expect. They're overlaid on a base zoning district and they add another layer of protection. For an example, historic overlay districts, the board actually just created a new one on Tuesday at the River Farm Historic Overlay. It basically adds another layer of protection for preserving historic structures. There's a couple other different types of overlay districts that add like water protection, supply overlay districts, that kind of thing. In terms of regulations, each of these districts does include those regulations, like I mentioned earlier, what kinds of uses are permitted in them. Your bulk regulations are your how tall, how far back, how wide, how much open space, your densities. And then you have use limitations as well. So sometimes, let's just say in a, I don't know, a commercial neighborhood shopping center, we may say you can have a craft beverage production. A brewery is fine here, but we have a use standard that says any of your production materials, they need to be inside. We just want to make sure that the neighboring residences don't have any impacts from noise, odor, visual clutter, that kind of thing. So you'll often see use limitations included in the zoning districts as well. Other articles, we have a lot of different topics that we get calls on all the time. Things like, where can I put my shed? How tall can my fence be? Can I have a tree house in my backyard? My favorite is the keeping of animals. I love those questions. We get chicken calls all the time, you know, keeping of bees. I've gotten crocodiles before, so you name it. We zone it, we deal with it. But other common topics include signs, parking, landscaping, and screening. We have regulations that deal with all of those different topics. I know you all, we had a bit of a glimpse into the zoning ordinance amendment process, but typically it is more topic specific rather than a whole overhaul, repeal, and replace of the zoning ordinance like the ZMOD project was. But over time, new topics come online that the ordinance didn't contemplate when it was, well, especially when it was written in 1978. Like short-term lodging, that was something that we had to do a specific amendment to, you know, allow for this new use and create appropriate regulations. We had small scale production, which is like maker spaces, smaller kind of crafting. It's not quite industrial. We wanted to encourage some adaptive reuse of commercial buildings. So we did a zoning ordinance amendment on that topic. I did a zoning ordinance amendment on hedgehogs and chinchillas. That was probably one of my personal favorites, to allow them as commonly accepted pets. So they really run the gamut in all sorts of topics. And basically what happens is similar to the, you know, what Graham was saying with the comprehensive plan. The board has a zoning ordinance amendment work program, and it's basically a list of topics, ideas that come from constituents, from the community. They come from county staff, they come from board members themselves, and the board each year adopts their prioritized, this is our to-do list and this is what we want staff to work on and bring back to us. So basically, once that work program is adopted, these topics get doled out to us planners and we start the research. We look at other jurisdictions, we look at best practices, and then we start the public engagement while we're doing that to get an idea of what the community wants. And, you know, let's start, you know, bringing these ideas, shopping these ideas around and seeing, you know, if this is what the community is thinking. After we get we feel like we've gotten a lot of community feedback and we feel good about the topic, we do bring it to the public hearing phases. We start with the authorization. Basically, the board says, okay, you can go forward. You can authorize, we're going to authorize you to advertise this amendment, and we're going to set some public hearing dates. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation on our amendments, and then the Board of Supervisors ultimately decides to either adopt or to not adopt that zoning ordinance amendment. Our 1978 zoning ordinance was amended almost 500 times since 1978, so it's been a piecemeal amendment process, and we are really happy that on March 23rd, the board did adopt the new ZMOD ordinance, the Zoning Ordinance Modernization Project. So this was the accumulation in over 3 years of outreach with over 100 public meetings. We have really streamlined our current 1,200 page document into 600 pages. We have tons of user-friendly tables, graphics like you'll see on this slide here. We really focus on the user experience of the ordinance and making sure that people can find their regulations. And once you can find it, you can understand what you're reading. We got rid of a lot of the legalese, all the jargon, and tried to make it more plain English is basically what we called it. We are working on getting it integrated into an online platform. It takes effect on July 1st, and it will be in its new online platform, which is called Encode, on July 1st. So that'll be really great with hover boxes and a lot of user friendliness in navigating the articles themselves. So I wanted to touch on just 2 quick topics that the this group wrote a letter, Denver wrote a letter, and this group endorsed the letter and sent it to the board, specifically supporting changes to accessory living units and home-based businesses. So I wanted to bring back kind of what happened with those. The accessory living units, this is a, you know, as I mentioned during our presentations previously, it's a subordinate unit that basically contains the provisions for eating, sleeping, living, and sanitation. It's accessory to a principal unit, can only be located in conjunction with a single family detached dwelling. So previously in Fairfax County, or still currently, somebody in the principal or accessory dwelling unit needed to be either 55 years in age or older, or a person with a disability. Now, the board did remove that age and disability requirement, which is something that our group did advocate for. So it was really great to see that they did remove that age and disability requirement. So now this is a tool that is accessible to young adults in Fairfax County, that they can either use it for additional rental income. You can move into one yourselves. If you wanted to live with your parents but have a supplemental kind of like independent living space, you can do that. So that's a good step for Fairfax County. We also currently, it's a special permit process to have any sort of accessory, that they're previously called accessory dwelling units. And the board for those interior accessory living units, so if you're in a basement or an addition, they changed the process from that special permit, which requires a Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing, lengthy process, time-consuming, expensive process, and now it's an administrative process. So that's another thing that this group supported, and we are happy to see come out of the board decision. I will note that this group did request for future study on detached units, as the board brought forward the current requirements that a detached unit requires that special permit and a minimum lot size of 2 acres, which is pretty hard to come by in Fairfax County. So there was a follow-on motion for my group to continue doing research and reporting back on these topics within 18 months. So we will continue to look into those topics, and that could be another opportunity for this group to weigh in once we're collecting information and data on how this is going. Now, the home-based businesses was the other topic that this group really weighed in on. Basically, the proposal was to modernize the home-based businesses and to expand the allowances to not just professional white-collar groups that could pursue this, but to all different sorts of home-based businesses, like cupcake making, which is on the screen here, or yoga classes, Pilates classes, you name it, anything happening out of the home. So the board did choose to adopt the more modern and broad home-based business use and standards, which was great. They did not go with staff's recommendation to allow customers by right for most of the uses. They did continue to require a special permit, which is that Board of Zoning Appeals process and public hearing in order to have customers or clients for certain uses. We are really happy to see that the uses and standards are modernized, and that there is a path forward with the special permit process. The fee was reduced from over $16,000 to $435,000. So that was a huge win for us as well. I probably mentioned this term, and maybe Graham has too. We've thrown it around a lot. This use is by right. It's permitted by right. So this refers to a use that doesn't need to go through a legislative approval. So it doesn't need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals or the Board of Supervisors to get that stamp of approval. Some uses that may have additional impacts do require different legislative approvals, like a special permit, special exception, or variance or rezoning. So that's the Zoning Evaluation Division, which is basically like my sister agency, and they process all of these applications with the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I'm going to touch on just very quickly what they do, but I'm not going to speak for them since they are the authority on this process. But essentially, in kind of increasing order of impacts and the amount of time it takes to go through the process. You have your special permits, which are typically your homeowner type applications, like the home-based business, or if you want to do an addition to your home that's too close to your setback line, you would request a special permit and go through the Board of Zoning Appeals. It's again, not as much of an anticipated impact as some of your special exception and rezoning applications. A variance is a little tougher to obtain. You basically have to prove that without granting the variance, you don't have a reasonable use of your land, which is hard to do if you say, I really need a garage. You're like, well, you have a house, so that's pretty reasonable to use your land with that. But no, besides that, there is an option for certain structures to request a variance approval. That also goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The special exceptions and the rezonings, now those are your bigger ticket items that go to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. Special exceptions typically can be like a drive-through restaurant. I think this slide is showing a Chick-fil-A. A lot of popular Chick-fil-A's come through the special exception process. And then the rezoning is when you're actually changing that zoning map that I showed you earlier. So you're going from like an R2 to a PDH something, or you're really trying to implement. That's how we implement the vision of the comprehensive plan, and we're looking forward to changing to whatever the future plan development for that property is. The Zoning Evaluation Division reviews a myriad of things, including the vision of the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance provisions themselves. They look at the character of the surrounding neighborhood. You know, is it high density, low density? What would the transition be like from the property to the surrounding properties? Traffic patterns. Is there existing infrastructure like sidewalks or trails, open space, tree cover, you name it. It's basically, they're looking at the whole picture here and forming a recommendation for the Board of Supervisors. This process typically takes 6 to 12 months from beginning to end and does have a huge public component as well. You know, there is an internal review that happens that results in a staff report with a staff recommendation. And the developer is often doing a lot of community outreach and engagement with those land use committees and with different groups to get feedback on the project even before it gets into the public hearing phase. The Zoning Evaluation Division works with a ton of agencies internally. There's actually 23 different agencies that typically get copies when a rezoning or a special exception comes in. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot of different things that are being reviewed and recommendations that are being made. And then the Z planner basically puts it all together and makes that staff recommendation. So we really do, as Graham again alluded to early on, we love the opportunity to see and hear young voices in the process. So there are many ways to get involved even outside of our council. There are land use committees that you can look into being a part of. Your local HOAs, really, they make a huge difference on these land use applications and send in letters from the HOAs to the board. Different citizen groups on different initiatives are formed all the time, or different amendments. There are public ads and notices that go out, especially with those, you know, the rezoning applications or the ones that go to the legislative process. If you see a big yellow board when you're driving around Fairfax County, that means there's something going on. You might want to check out our website if you're interested in that site to see what the plans are. We have a bunch of mailing lists. You can go specifically to just DPD to get on email lists, basically, listservs. Or you can do specifically like zoning evaluation or zoning administration, depending on what you're interested in hearing about. And then your district supervisors, most of them, at least if not all of them, have newsletters and email blasts that they do. And we work with them to get our cases and our amendments into those listservs to kind of get the information out. So if you're not already following your supervisor, it's a great way to stay involved. Just a couple of resources. We do have a Fairfax County Facebook page for zoning. We also have one for land use planning. So if you're interested in following those Facebook pages, they're fun. There's that link to all the mailing lists that the county has. And then just I think with that, you know, we can chat about any questions or any comments that you guys might have.
And I think we'll be a little informal, allowing people to unmute to ask questions. Thank you, Casey and Graham.
I just dropped 2 links into the chat you guys can see. The first one is what Casey just mentioned, which is the land use planning Facebook page. And then the other one is the link to the listserv page that's for all of Fairfax County. And so you can go into that and click on which listservs you'd want to do. So that includes comp planning listservs. I think there's probably one for zoning too, I would imagine. Yeah, Casey's checking it. Yeah. So definitely check those out. And as Sarah's mentioned, yes, definitely get on your supervisor's email list if you haven't already, because they send out stuff all the time. So it's there's a lot of communication. So anybody have any questions? Anything that they want to bring up? Anything that they want to highlight in terms of just kind of what we do and how young adults can provide their input?
I just want to say thank you to both of you so much, and we're really glad to hear that all of your hard work paid off with the ZMod being approved. So great job.
I have to say, I think it was really great, and the board really was appreciative to get the feedback from this group as well. So I think it was really great that everybody worked together, and Denver put the letter together for us.
It was definitely noticed, that's for sure. Yeah, very much so.
Very noticed. All right, well, hearing no questions, I guess I will transition us to the next part of our agenda. Graham, do you want to give me permission to share? Because I have the letter with Sarah's edits, and we can quickly go over that.
Sure, go ahead. Let me. You can pull it up whenever you're ready, Denver. And Denver, if you're having trouble, I have it pulled up as well. I can pull it up if you'd prefer. Denver, you there?
I'm here. I'm just trying to find the document. I have 7 different Word docs open, so that was my own fault. So give me just 2 seconds.
Take your time.
Alrighty. So this was shared to you all in draft form. Sarah provided some grammatical and, just structure edits. But in general, the Board of Supervisors is considering adding a penny to the real estate assessment tax. That's a penny per $100 per tax assessment of the tax property. And that penny would be dedicated to affordable and senior housing specifically. Currently, we only have half a penny in the budget from 2006 2009, when Jerry Connolly was the Board of Supervisor, chairman of the Board of Supervisors. The rate was 1.5, and then was reduced down to the half penny that it is now. So that kind of gives a little structure of this letter that, during the 3 years, over $100 million was raised for affordable housing during the time in which we had a penny and a half. And we're hoping to get back to that level to meet the 15,000 units that we are still in need of. So here's the letter in full. Feel free to read and kind of, give any edits if you may have them.
I just have a quick question.
Absolutely.
Do we have any insight into why Fairfax County decreased it from 1.5 to the 0.5? Is there a motive behind that?
My natural inclination was the 2008 recession, and the impact on our residents, and trying to help in that space, and then a little bit of pushback. And also, I would think there was a political shift during that time. But Graham, I don't know if you have more context into that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I could check with Judith. She would obviously know. She was the one that presented last week. But we can get back to you on that, Sarah. One typo, Denver, at the very top. Thankfully, it is no longer the year 2020. And so just mention it's 2021.
My mind refuses to recognize that a whole year has passed. Thank you, Graham. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I didn't have any edits. I think it's great, and I really appreciate you putting this together. Thumbs up.
Too much. Any other comments, edits, concerns?
When would we have to send this by?
They're still in the conversation, still budget season. I would like to get it over tomorrow if we can, and just get it, submitted, because I know a lot of other advocacy groups have made their voice heard already, and their public hearing session on the penny was booked, where they're only taking written testimony instead of verbal testimony. So the sooner the better is my hope.
Denver, are we aware of any other counties or jurisdictions that have done this penny increase proposal? I'm just curious where we got it from. I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious where this proposal came from.
Right. So I know my lovely old boss, Catherine Hudgens, was fighting for the penny for over 10 years. I think since it was removed, and she fought against the removal since she was in office at that time. So I think it's just kind of going back to the standard or where we were. I cannot tell you on the top of my head of the percentage or the rates set in Arlington and Alexandria, but I do believe it's higher than ours. I want to say it's like 2.3 cents. In Arlington, that might be slightly off, but it's definitely more than what we have here.
With the basic rate per 100,000 of value, correct?
Per $100.
That's right. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yes,
Per
yes,
$100,
yes.
yeah.
Actually, I can like look that up real quick and see where Arlington is exactly. But we are, to my understanding, lower than our Arlington and Alexandria neighbors. And I think Loudoun, I'm not entirely sure about Loudoun. Actually, I don't want to speak to that and have that, incorrectly on the record here.
Sure. And I can go back and research it as well. I was just curious if you knew it offhand, but yeah, I can dig into it offline as well.
Thank you so much, Denver, for putting this together. I mean, I guess I feel comfortable going ahead. I would like to know, for certain why it was reduced to begin with, just to, I mean, yeah, I mean, the Great Recession makes sense, and it could very well have been that. Yeah, the only outstanding question in my mind is what was it, what were the reasons behind reducing it? Why hasn't Fairfax County raised it again? And if there was I guess a valid reason for doing that or not. I don't think we'll know that answer by tomorrow, which is fine. Do we have any steer on, like who's against this? Compared to who's for this, just to understand what the landscape is on this topic?
We are not a political body. Gonna preface, like, put that as a preface here.
Sorry, I didn't mean political parties. I meant like what groups, like are
Right.
most community groups for this, or are the only people against this, I guess people that would be taxed higher, or what do we have any steer on which groups? Yeah, just because I feel like that would be related to perhaps why it was opposed.
Yeah, so in terms of those who are on board with the Board of Supervisors, I think we are close to a majority. I think there might be some, I mean, Pat Harity probably is not on board. And I think, and that's the only one that I know that it's probably shaky and won't support this measure. But Chairman McKay, I think, is taking an assessment of the entire board and is in our main focus for advocacy and lobby. Well, we can't lobby as a BAC, but advocacy and persuasion and emailing and contacting when it comes to pushing this at the Board of Supervisors. FESCAR, which is Virginia, it's a Virginia-based organization for documented communities, have been putting letter support as well as other, community and low-income nonprofit organizations have been in support of this. I haven't seen the opposition. Graham, I don't know if you have when it comes to this. I know probably HOAs are generally, standing and questioning.
Yeah,
That's really helpful. Thank you.
yeah, I wish I had more to add, Sarah, but I don't. Haven't been as engaged in the penny discussions as I have on the kind of the land use preservation end of things. So unfortunately, I don't know. We can look into it though and get back to you about that.
That was really helpful, Denver. Thank you. It was just good to get a steer from yeah, where this stands. So yeah, thank you again for putting this together. Really appreciate it.
All right, so the letter is before you all. If there's no other discussion, I mean, we can certainly continue with discussion. If there's no longer any discussion, I would entertain a motion as the body will find fit. And then we can go and act on that motion accordingly.
Sounds good.
So I will second that motion.
So Diego, can I say that you're motioning to approve the letter and to send it to Chairman McKay and the Board of Supervisors?
Yes, you can.
Okay, Perfect. So we'll say I second it. Well, it's done. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you all. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, with the vast majority of our council members voting for, it has passed and it will get sent out to Chairman McKay and the Board of Supervisors to show our support for increasing a penny and supporting our affordable housing measures. So thanks, y'all. All right, so then let me put on my video so you guys know I'm an actual person. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. So we're gonna go to, we're gonna be possibly ahead of schedule. I'm gonna give you a few more minutes of your day back. The announcement side of things, I would like to kick off the announcement with some like heavy work. And then we can go to fun announcements and personal announcements and snaps of the day. But per our conversation at the last board meeting, we did want to bring up our attendance policy and how we want to go forward with handling attendance. Graham and I have been in some conversation about this and recognizing that we do want board members to take their roles seriously. And we want to make sure we meet quorums and our duties and expectations as a council. Sorry, I keep saying board members are council members, and take our duties as a council seriously. But we also want to make sure we are not creating a space which does not encourage growth, participation, nurturing environments where real life happens outside of our monthly meetings and subcommittee meetings, and how to balance that. Per our conversation, I think we noted even in last meeting that if you miss 3 months in a row without communication, that does bring alarm. And Graham and I would say I will propose, I'm not going to put Graham since he's not a council member, but I would propose that on month 4, we would bring that person before the council to determine if we want to put that person on notice. So that would be our final touch point to see if they are still active. And then the 5th meeting would be our conversation of removal, where we would then go to either the appointing chair, the appointing member, whether that be the chairman of the board or the individual board supervisor, to remove that person. So that's the hope in which I'm going to put forward, and the intention I'm going to put out there, where we would have 3 meetings, no show up. 4th, you're on notice, like what is going on? Can you please talk to us? 5th meeting, you're gone. Which I think is quite generous, but I will put that out there for conversation and discussion from you all. Ooh.
The only thing I would say is that Anna, please don't think that
Oh no.
this discussion is being applied to you in any way, shape, or form. That was just an error in we were missing a K in your email address, so that's obviously not intended for you. So just
Not at all.
It's clear.
Yeah, I think that makes, perfect sense. I think it's very generous, flexible. So I would support that.
Okay. And with that being noted, there would be 2 council members who we put on notice per this meeting. That would be Lee and Muhammad, who would be put on notice. Lee has been in communication with us, so at least we have heard from him. Unfortunately, we have not heard anything from Muhammad. So I would say we will put those 2 on notice. Graham, if you're okay, if you're comfortable, or I can do it as well, reach out with them, say this, the council has put you on notice. If we do not hear, or you do not attend the next meeting, or have a good, have reasoning of why you cannot attend, you will be up for consideration of removal at the next meeting.
That's good. I think we could probably just reach out to them, just the 2 of us, and we'll
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And once again, we want this to be a nurturing, loving, great, supportive group, but we do have a lot of work to do. I mean, the county has been ignoring young professional voices for decades. So we have mountains to climb, and we just need dedicated members to come forward. Graham, do you want to get an update on FCPS? I know we just talked about this last week, but get an update on FCPS, Penny Gross, and Supervisor Smith's appointments, and if those have been changed or we've heard anything.
Yeah, so we did reach out regarding the two vacancies that we have, or three vacancies, excuse me. We do have a vacancy for the Sully district. I think that Dalton was not able to continue given his line of work that I think he works in campaigns and it's campaign season, so he apologized, but he's not able to continue on. And then with the representative for the Mason district, which was Najma Mohammed, she moved out of the county. And then Leslie Asensio, who was the FCPS representative, she also moved out of the county as well. So we didn't get to them in time. And I think it kind of is illustrative of one of the things that we're trying to do with this council, obviously, is retain young people. So kind of goes to show that we have our work cut out for us. So anyways, we've reached out to each of those supervisors as well as to Jill Cooper, who's the clerk, to see about getting those vacancies filled soon. So we're hoping to be able to get some new members on board once they're able to be tapped. Basically, it takes board action to appoint people to a VAC. So it'll be hopefully at one of the upcoming board meetings, although it is budget season. So they are fairly laser focused on budget matters right this second. So I'll provide an update as soon as I know one regarding those vacancies.
But that also bears to state that if you know a young advocate, young professional in Mason and Sully, or with the FCPS system, please recommend them and ask them to contact their representatives to possibly fill that role. By no means is this a cliquish organization where we want our friends to be here, but you all know some really great advocates. We want to make sure every voice is heard and you feel as if you know someone in Sully, Mason, or FCPS who would be a great benefit to this organization. We would, highly encourage them to contact their representatives and have them considered. But at the end of the day, granted, it is the supervisor's decision of who to appoint. And then it also bears to note, just recognize as well, is that we are not the only BAC that has issues with attendance. Many others have issues with maintaining quorum, and some of those BACs only meet quarterly, and they still have issues. So we appreciate you going through our growing pains, and you all have been great. I mean, I've talked to you guys every month, and I can't wait to actually see you in person and actually get to know you face to face. But you all have been wonderful. And I appreciate your work and your advocacy and your ears to the ground when it comes to the county and how we can progress this space. All right. Sorry?
One final thing. I mentioned this in the email that I sent out yesterday, but the active transportation plan, which Nicole Wyans and Chris Wells presented on back in November, I believe. I think it was the first thing that we covered. Maybe it was in December. That is very much up and running. So if you want to get involved in the active transportation planning efforts, they are organizing a series of district-based community meetings. They're also doing one, I believe, exclusively in Spanish. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do community engagement in the bike ped, equestrian, hiking, everything active transportation planning kind of realm. So that is something that is very interesting, I think, to many of us on this council, and it's one where they are in it. They came and spoke to us, but they're very, very interested in hearing kind of the youth perspective and the young adult perspective in particular, because we tend to be people that are really pro biking and pro walking, obviously. So, and there is an online community survey. So, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun to take. So, a lot of visual preference survey kind of stuff. So. Feel free, get involved with that, go out and represent the young adult voice. It's an important thing, and it's also a lot of fun.
And Sarah just put in the chat about the community survey with transportation. I don't know if we have survey results from that yet.
Oh, no, just to clarify, I filled out the survey, and at the end, you can put comments. And so I put in the comments how the YAC would love to hear the results when they're available. And I did mention your name, Graham. So there is a chance if you get a random email from them, which I'm hoping you do, just know that is why. So yeah, I'd really encourage everyone else to take it. especially if you're not able to attend the meeting as well, just to make sure that our voices are heard. And I made sure to mention in the comments, that I'm part of the YAC, that I am a young adult, and that, active Fairfax is so related to attracting and retaining young people. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah.
Could I add one thing on the like transportation side of things? So the Department of Economic Initiatives is also, I guess, I don't know if it's hosting or leading an initiative that's occurring next week on April 21st. And I may ask Graham, since I can't email everybody, to email the details on this afterwards. But essentially, it's a bicycle and pedestrian safety pitch and pilot, an innovation challenge. And you're able to register and watch the pitches, and they're going to basically, it's like an innovation challenge that's focusing on bicycle and pedestrian safety, finding the best ideas and solutions to improve safety for road users. So you can register and listen to the pitches and watch the judging happen if that's something that you're interested in. Just, for anyone that's on the infrastructure committee group, since we aren't meeting before then. So, Graham, I will send, I think you're CC'd on the email, so
Yeah, I have it ready.
you can send that. There we go. Perfect. Thanks.
All right, this is our announcement section. So any other announcements, good and welfare? They can be personal too. We're kind of like a little family. We can talk about that. But yeah, anything else?
That's it. Thank you so much for providing an update on attendance and everything. Really appreciate you closing the loop on that, and obviously writing the letter as well. So thank you. And thanks, Graham and Casey, for presenting.
Yeah, and we have two wonderful people. We're lucky. We're honestly lucky to have Graham and Casey with us, and Graham being, within this young adult group. So appreciate you. Before we close out, just another reminder, as I will say probably in all meetings, you all are ambassadors in your own positions. Make sure you use it wisely. If you see something that we can do, influence things that we need to participate in, please let us know. If you see gaps or deficiencies in our actions, granted we are new, but we do need to evolve constantly. So please know that your membership and on this council is greatly valued, and that we're all equivalents in this space. So please put your influence, make your mark, and let us know where we can be helpful to progress our wonderful county of Fairfax. All right. Anything else for good order? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
We need someone to move it.
Oh, well, I move the motion then.
Thank you. Thank you. And is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Wonderful. Without objection, I hope. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn at 8:20 p.m. Enjoy your extra 10 minutes this evening, and we'll see you online soon. If you have not, I'm sorry, I should have said earlier, if you have not done the availability survey, please do it ASAP so we can get our subcommittees scheduled and get those on the books. It's in the chat if anyone needs it. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.